So will it catch up?
200 Ukrainian drones are powerfully attacking oil facilities all across Russia.
Yeah, it's heading straight for Lukoil.
The Ukrainian armed forces are advancing in Donbas. There's a threat of encirclement for the Russians. Europe is intensively preparing for an attack during military exercises in Belarus. Iranian military personnel have arrived there. The Ukrainian intelligence service destroyed a Russian army command post, killing a bunch of top officers. The Kremlin announced that they are withdrawing from peace talks while Nato is preparing a military response to the attack on Poland. Pedophiles who raped orphans in boarding schools are running in local elections in Bashkiria. An assassination attempt on the chief Kremlin propagandist Solovyov. Did he manage to survive? A nuclear threat to Kharkiv. Russia is deliberately striking laboratories with enriched uranium. Hello, my name is Anastasia Dmitrovskaya. Right now, the main news. But first, please like this video and subscribe to our channel so we don't lose touch with you on YouTube. On the night of September 12th, Russia was massively attacked by more than 200 drones.
Grisha just had to film it. He could not help himself. He wanted to capture exactly how she reacted, how she faltered and hesitated. Again, just like before. They would, he thought, probably dash away, just as they always did, but would it catch up to them this time? Everything started flashing. I actually filmed it.
Explosions were heard in Smolensk. Local residents there reported a hit on the Lukoil oil storage facility.
Quiet. At least close it. What if it heads for Lukoil now?
We'll make it in time.
Yeah, it's flying straight at Lukoil.
Also, on the night of September 12th, the governor of the Leningrad region, Alexander Drozdenko, announced an attack on the Primorsk oil terminal. A fire broke out on one of the ships there. According to Drozdenko, a total of 30 drones were shot down over the region. Look, a nice little mushroom cloud has risen.
Meanwhile, at St. Petersburg's Pulkovo airport, 28 flights were delayed due to the drone attack, 13 more were cancelled, and 11 planes were diverted to alternate airfields. As usual, the Russian Ministry of Defense reported that they shot everything down. Naturally, and again as usual, no information is provided about any consequences of this attack. But judging by the videos published by Russians themselves, there were hits and quite significant ones. This kind of sanctions pressure on the Russian economy, in my opinion, is very effective. And as we can see, Russians aren't really managing to circumvent these sanctions. I think such attacks should be continued and scaled up. And maybe when Russians switch from cars to donkeys or horses, they'll finally get the message. Like this video, if you agree with me. Russia and Belarus have started the military exercises Zapad 2025.
On September 12th, the strategic exercises Zapad 2025 began in Belarus, during which Belarusian and Russian troops are practicing actions to repel possible aggression and improve cooperation.
The exercises themselves will last until September 16th and will take place at training grounds in the Republic of Belarus and the Russian Federation. But here's what's interesting.
Poland completely closed its border with Belarus on the evening of September 11th because of the Zapad military exercises. Moreover, this decision was made even before the incident with the fall of Russian drones. On Thursday, the Latvian Saeima voted to completely close the country's borders with Russia and Belarus during the Zapad military exercises. In addition, Poland and Latvia have restricted flights over parts of their territory near the border with Belarus.
By the way, our sources in the defense forces report that 600 military personnel from Iran will take part in these exercises, and some of them are already on Belarusian territory. Whether there is a serious threat from Russia and Belarus right now is unclear. But what is clear is that the West seems to be starting to take such provocations from Lukashenko and Putin seriously. And honestly, I have to say that is very encouraging. Reading the comments under previous episodes, I see that many of our viewers are from Kazakhstan, Moldova, Europe, and even the USA. We Ukrainians are very grateful to you for your support and proud to have such sensible viewers. Let us know in the comments under this episode as well which country you're watching us from and whether your country supports our fight against the empire of evil. I always enjoy reading your comments. And now, let's continue. Things are about to get even more interesting. The Ukrainian armed forces have liberated new territories in the Donetsk region. Deep state analysts report that Ukrainian forces in the Dobropilya area of Donetsk region have pushed back Russian occupation troops near the villages of Shakov and Vladimirovka, which are in the Pokrovsk district. Also, a bit further to the west, the defense forces have significantly moved closer to fully encircling a group of Russian troops. It should be noted that this could already be the second encirclement for the occupiers in this area. The first one is located a bit further north near the occupied Kucheryavy Yar. Meanwhile, in the temporarily occupied Zaporizhzhia region, fighters from the main intelligence directorate of Ukraine struck the command post of the Russian armed forces. It is known that top officers of Russia's 35th Army were killed.
Ukraine's defense forces, together with partisans, located and blew up the command post of the Russian armed forces in the occupied Zaporizhzhia region. Among the 17 dead, 2 lieutenant colonels were identified.
Naturally, there are no official statements and, as usual, no reported losses either. But while the Russian Ministry of Defense claims there are no losses, the 3rd Motorized Rifle Battalion of Russia's 9th Separate Motorized Rifle Brigade has suffered huge personnel losses.
In the report by the battalion's deputy commander for military political work, Guard Senior Lieutenant Mamontov, it is stated that as of September 2, 2025, the status of 193 servicemen who are listed as missing in action needs to be changed. The report states that documents have already been submitted for 158 people, and documents from relatives are still being collected for 35 people.
To fully understand the situation, it should be clarified that the average personnel strength of a motorized rifle battalion is about 500 people. In other words, almost 40% of the total number of servicemen are being declared dead. But let me remind you, there are no losses in the Russian army. Meanwhile, Atesh partisans struck the air defense plant in Tula. Well, a communications tower was destroyed, but the enemy's main failures right now are not even in the rear, but directly on the front line of combat. Details coming up in our military review.
A precise strike and the occupiers were blown apart. The main intelligence directorate of Ukraine destroyed a Russian Black Sea Fleet ship near Novorossiysk. The Ukrainian armed forces hit a ship that the Russians put into service in 2015. Its value is about $60 million. There are only 4 such vessels in Russia. Now 3 remain. Additionally, Atesh movement agents struck the air defense plant in Tula and destroyed a communications tower. Meanwhile, in Belarus, a secret military base is being built. Construction work in the south of the country is now in full swing. The construction area is roughly equivalent to 280 football fields. Russian media report that the Russian missile system Oreshnik may be deployed here.
The emergence of this information can be seen as an element of information and psychological operations. What has been confirmed is that indeed, on the territory of the Republic of Belarus, a military base near Osipovichi, where the 465th Missile Brigade is stationed, has been modernized. It should be noted that 3 new hangars have indeed been built there, in which Iskander-M systems are housed.
And while Lukashenko is secretly carrying out Putin's orders, Poland is completely closing its border with Belarus from the night of September 11th to 12th, including railway crossings. The country has officially taken this step because of the Russian-Belarusian exercises that begin on Friday. But in reality, of course, it's all about those very drones that were flying toward Poland, including from the territory of Belarus.
The agenda of these military exercises will be the implementation of the so-called Suwalki Corridor, meaning an incursion from the territory of the Republic of Belarus with the aim of creating a land corridor that would connect the Republic of Belarus with the Russian enclave of the Kaliningrad region. Therefore, such preventive actions by the Polish side are a response to possible provocations from the Russian Federation.
And yes, Poland continues to count Kremlin drones. Let us recall that about 15 Russian UAV wrecks have been found on the country's territory. One of the drones crashed on the territory of a military base. At the same time, Putin's Geran drones were equipped with additional fuel tanks. Thanks to this, the UAVs were able to cover a distance of more than 700 kilometers. And here's what's important to note. The drones that entered Poland weren't just flying anywhere, but were heading toward the NATO base in Rzeszów. It's interesting. After this, will the alliance continue to just express concern for much longer?
Regarding the extra fuel tanks, I wouldn't rule out that this is actually an element of a planned provocation by the Russian side. The technical specifications of the Geran drones, their range is up to 450 kilometers. The main version at the present time being promoted by the Russian side is that the Geran drones were reportedly suppressed by electronic warfare systems, and Ukraine's air defense changed their direction, and as a result, after deviating, they violated Polish airspace. This is the explanation currently being emphasized by Russian sources. Let me emphasize again, most of the Geran drones were launched directly from the territory of the Republic of Belarus.
In turn, the German chancellor stated that this drone incident demonstrated the need for a significant reform of the alliance's air defense in Europe.
During the counteraction against the UAVs, F-35s were scrambled and accordingly used missiles to destroy the Geran drones, which cost $10,000 each. and each missile costs about 1.5 million. This accordingly indicates NATO's unpreparedness to repel large-scale attacks by either the Russian Federation or the Republic of Belarus on NATO countries using aerodynamic means of destruction.
Meanwhile, Russia continues to use the territory of Crimea for its military logistics. Since the very first days of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, it has been transferring its troops to the southern front in the Kherson and Zaporizhzhia regions, using the Kerch Bridge for this purpose.
The Russian Federation fully understands the key importance of Crimea. This includes accordingly the infrastructure of military bases and also as a springboard for further pressure on mainland Ukraine. That is why the main objective of the Russian Federation is to hold on to the peninsula by military means.
And to fight the occupiers, the United Kingdom and Ukraine are launching joint production of interceptor drones, which will be effective in destroying Russian Shaheds and other strike UAVs.
Third correspondent, I never cease to admire the courage and heroism of Ukrainian soldiers. They are holding the front and standing up to a huge horde that vastly outnumbers them. That is why I urge everyone to support the armed forces of Ukraine. Now, I suggest we talk about the elections in Russia. Or rather, not about the elections themselves, but about certain candidates. In short, elections will be held in Belarus on September 14th. This is a city in Russia, in the southern Urals, and there they will be electing a new composition of the Belarus City Council. And everything would be fine if our sources hadn't told us about the pedophiles from United Russia who are among the candidates there. And here, calling them pedophiles is not just a figure of speech. Journalists reported that for many years, Belarus deputies used Bashkir children from boarding schools as entertainment. And for years, the local elites supplied children from the Ulyanovsk orphanage for sexual pleasures. Moreover, all of this was recorded on video. So according to journalists who covered the scandal involving the deputies, the main child abuser there is the head of the Belarus district, Andrei Vanyuta.
All of this took place, attention, in Belozersky, in Beloretsk, yes, district of Bashkortostan, in the city of Beloretsk itself. Not far from there, from the orphanage, you won't believe it, there's some kind of tire shop. At this tire shop, services were provided. Children were sold for the pleasure of officials. Well, I watched the report when it came out. Almost all the top officials of the district administration were noted there, present, and were caught on these videos. But I suppose that at this tire shop, my friends, just look at this. You truly cannot even imagine it. It's absolutely unimaginable. These were, so to speak, services of the lowest level. So there must have been top and VIP services, so to speak, for higher ranking officials. Do you doubt that? I have absolutely no doubt. And do you know how brazen it got? That not only were orphans used, but also children who, it seems, were already placed, basically children from families. And it was only when the parents of the affected children, well, the children who suffered, filed a report with the police.
The scandal involving the pedophile deputies was so loud that even a presidential inspection team came to Belarus. It turned out that the very same head of the district, Andrei Vanyuta, was involved. He abruptly resigned without explanation right after the scandal and, of course, tried to distance himself from it. He even collected signatures together with the other participants in the scheme for a statement claiming it was all slander. But what happened in the end? In the end, everything was hushed up. The investigators said at the time that there weren't many children involved, just a few, and that there was only one perpetrator, and he was already in pretrial detention.
They covered up this criminal case. A decision was made not to open a criminal case. Can you imagine that?
So now about the elections. Right now, almost all the United Russia deputy candidates in the Belarus district are also connected to Vanyuta, and partly to the children, and they want to get a seat on the city council. And let me tell you, the candidates there are all cut from the same cloth. Here you have the flamboyant child enthusiast Sergei Vladimirovich Salov, who held lessons on courage with Vanyuta at the children's shelter. And then there's the corrupt firefighter Renat Rivalovich Faizulin, whom Vanyuta personally congratulated on receiving an award. There's also Ilyas Galevich Mukhomedyanov, the director of the heating networks, who, believe it or not, was appointed by Vanyuta himself and who fails to start the heating season every year in that same Beloretsk. And among the candidates, there's also an energy healer with an American education, a participant in the special military operation, and a former head of Belarus who was removed from office due to corruption. All these people, mind you, are running for city council. There are questions for all of these people, including those related to the scandal involving children from the orphanage. All these people want power, and something tells me that they will have that power in the very near future. European officials convinced Trump of the need to put pressure on Russia. Politico reports that European leaders convinced Trump of the need to put pressure on Russia in order to achieve a peaceful resolution to the conflict in Ukraine.
And although there is broad consensus on the need to put pressure on Putin to force him to come to the negotiating table, the Trump administration prefers to use trade tools, such as tariffs, to deplete the Kremlin's military coffers, while the EU insists on imposing official sanctions against companies and financial institutions that cooperate with Moscow.
Therefore, discussions about exactly how to put pressure on the Kremlin are unavoidable. Meanwhile, Putin's press secretary Dmitry Peskov announced a so-called pause in negotiations between Russia and Ukraine. At the same time, he added that although there are communication channels between the negotiating teams, one should not wear rose-colored glasses and expect lightning-fast results from the talks. And Peskov accused European leaders of allegedly hindering a peaceful settlement. Well, I won't even comment on Peskov. But when it comes to the negotiations between Trump and EU leaders, that's actually a very interesting story. What do you think? Will the EU be able to find common ground with Trump? After Russian drones entered Polish airspace, NATO is preparing a response. And Bloomberg reports that the alliance is preparing a specifically military response. I wonder what kind exactly.
The military response will be coordinated by the Supreme Allied Commander Europe, Alexis Grinkiewicz, who is responsible for planning and conducting all of the alliance's military operations.
A source claims that NATO command is currently assessing the situation and determining further actions.
Looking ahead, we still have much to do. At present, the alliance member states are working on improving their weaponry, which allows them to reduce the costs of conducting military operations. We will continue to do this together with all the alliance countries.
At the same time, President Trump made a loud statement that apparently will please the Kremlin. He said that the Russian drone attack on Poland could have been a mistake.
It could have been a mistake. But in any case, I am not pleased with anything related to this situation.
Well, it's not surprising to hear such statements from Trump. However, in Poland itself, they stated that there can be no talk of a mistake. They even said that they have evidence of a deliberate attack on the country's territory by Russian drones.
Russia deliberately attacked Poland. We have facts and evidence to support this. It was a planned provocation coordinated with a disinformation campaign. Softening this truth only strengthens the Russian narrative. Every word that undermines the fact that we were dealing with a deliberate act supports Russian disinformation. Disinformation is also an element of war. Poland's Minister of Digital Affairs, Krzysztof Gałkowski.
In addition, the head of Poland's Ministry of Foreign Affairs emphasized that Trump should finally realize that Putin is mocking him.
President Trump needs to see that Putin is mocking him. Putin is sending more and more drones, first to Ukraine and then beyond.
In fact, it turns out that even NATO is starting to take action, and Poland understands that this is far from a coincidence, and only Trump is trying to whitewash Putin. What do you think? Could he really be Agent Krasnov?
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Ukrainians without Russian passports may be deported from the occupied territory. And 6 months ago, Putin issued a decree requiring Ukrainians in the temporarily occupied territories who do not have Russian citizenship to either legalize their status or leave Russian territory by September 10th. By legalization, it means registering people as migrants. They must submit their biometric data to the police and provide tests for HIV and drug use. Let's look at all the details.
Russia is planning to forcibly expel Ukrainians from Ukraine. This concerns those people who live in the temporarily occupied Ukrainian territories and do not have a Russian passport. In March 2024, the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin signed a decree, according to which, starting from September 10, 2025, Ukrainians without Russian passports will be considered illegal migrants and may be forcibly deported.
To enroll a child in kindergarten or school, and to get a job in the civil service or even in municipal services. To get a job at some enterprises, in other words, just to survive and earn a living there. Obviously, those who haven't obtained a passport aren't trying to join the civil service, understanding that right now that would mean joining the occupation authorities, which is a crime. But even at some municipal enterprises, like those that maintain the streets here, you couldn't get a job without a Russian passport.
Surviving as Ukrainians in the temporarily occupied territories has always been difficult. Now, however, the Russians are depriving people of even the ability to remain in their homeland.
There are people who received Russian passports who are still waiting for Ukraine to return, but they are in a hopeless situation. They have nothing to live on. These are pensioners who, if they don't receive their pensions, will simply starve to death. These are people who lived on social benefits, and many of them simply lost their jobs.
The document states that Ukrainian citizens who are allegedly illegally present in Russia must either leave the country or legalize their status.
Over the past 10 years, an entire generation has grown up in the occupied territory. People who are antisocial, who were born there during the war, or were very young when the war began, meaning they were about 7 to 10 years old, and now they have reached adulthood. And apart from drinking, drugs, and murder, they have seen nothing else in this territory. So they've grown up, they don't want to work, and they don't know how to do anything except drugs and drinking. And they simply don't go to the passport offices to get these passports. But now they're causing problems in this territory. They need to be deported. Why are they needed there? By the Russian authorities? They would be ready to deport them to us in Ukraine, but they can't. There's no connection with Ukraine.
Since January 5th of this year, in the temporarily occupied territories, the Russians have created a registry of controlled persons. The occupiers enter information there about Ukrainians who have not obtained a Russian passport.
I think they're being formed. I think this information is being collected. I think it's being accumulated somewhere so that later they can figure out which of these people are dangerous for the occupying authorities and who should have been taken away to a basement long ago, but for some reason they're still not there.
Since March 5th, 2025, a law has come into effect that allows police officers to enter people's homes without Russian citizenship in the temporarily occupied territories.
They even started visiting each other, the military visiting the police visiting the military, and Russian citizens who are already in power there, those who have achieved some rank or have somehow proven themselves to the authorities. They already have a certain standard of living, income, and power, and suddenly the police started coming to them too. Because for some reason they weren't told in the list that these people shouldn't be visited. I think it was adopted solely for this purpose. As for all the other ordinary citizens in the occupied territory, I think it doesn't concern them because no law applies in the occupied territory anyway.
The Ukrainian Center for Countering Disinformation explains that forced passportization is the Kremlin's way of creating the appearance of legality for the occupation of Ukrainian lands. And repression and threats of deportation against those unwilling to live in Russia become a tool through which the terrorist state tries to suppress any disloyalty to the occupation authorities.
Russia has struck the laboratory of the Kharkiv Institute, where enriched uranium is stored 74 times. Journalists from the New York Times report that the threat of nuclear contamination in Kharkiv is growing ever higher. It keeps getting higher.
The Kharkiv Institute of Physics, which participated in the development of the first Soviet atomic bombs, agreed in 2010 to stop working with weapons-grade uranium, transferring it to Russia at the insistence of the United States for the purpose of nuclear non-proliferation. The institute still stores extremely dangerous materials, such as uranium in a neutron source, enriched to a much higher level of radioactivity than the fuel used at a nuclear power plant. The institute does not disclose the exact amount of uranium that is present at the facility.
The building where the enriched uranium is stored is regularly damaged by drones, rockets, and artillery.
In the indictment, which clearly states that a direct hit could potentially lead to the contamination of an area where approximately 640,000 people live, 5 Russian officers are formally accused of ecocide, that is, of attempting to use significant environmental damage as a weapon of war.
And while the problem is clearly acknowledged, there is not a single word, not even a hint that anyone is planning to do anything about it. Armenia is preparing to open its borders with its longtime geopolitical adversary, Turkey. The two countries have grown closer than ever before. Previously, the reason was Yerevan's fear and dissatisfaction with the Kremlin's policy toward the former Soviet republics. Putin has once again found himself in a difficult position in the Caucasus. More details about all of this in our report.
A major event for Armenia. After nearly 33 years of isolation, the country is ready to restore relations with its neighbor and reopen their shared border. There are no issues or delays on the Armenian side. We are ready to open the borders and establish diplomatic relations as soon as tomorrow. The Armenian-Turkish border is 328 kilometers long, from the triple border junction with Georgia in the north to the junction with Azerbaijan in the south. It has been closed since April 3, 1993, when Turkey unilaterally blocked the border, officially citing the occupation of Azerbaijani regions by Armenian forces as the reason. Back then, 3 decades ago, the Ankara government promised to open the border only on the condition that Armenia would stop seeking international recognition of the Armenian genocide by the Turks and withdraw its troops from the conflict zone in Nagorno-Karabakh. And now, in 2025, it seems that the disagreements between the neighboring countries have been resolved.
Experts believe that's the case. Pashinyan is trying to shift the focus from territorial claims to attempts at building peaceful relations with neighboring countries.
Armenia has only recently taken a sharp new course toward reconciliation with its neighbors. It was only in August of this year that an official ceremony was held at the White House to sign a peace agreement with Azerbaijan. The document states that Baku and Yerevan renounce any mutual territorial claims. They also agree to stop using force against each other. And just a month later, Armenia is ready to let go of old grievances and start a new chapter in its history with neighboring Turkey by opening the land borders between the two countries.
This is a kind of brief concluding epilogue to the August 8th meeting in Washington, when in Armenia, Azerbaijan, and many other countries in the region, people have recently started talking about the arrival of peace. And perhaps this is a kind of encouragement for Armenia from Turkey.
However, experts clarify that the intention to open the borders should not be confused with the actual launch of local border checkpoints. Despite Armenia's clear desire to be friends with its neighbors again, the decision to resume border crossings will not be made by Turkey alone.
I think that Turkey will not make this decision without coordinating with Azerbaijan.
Experts note that there is no breakthrough yet, the borders remain closed, and trade is only conducted through third countries. And there are not even any diplomatic relations established. And the main reason is still the unresolved issues with Azerbaijan.
Turkey's position in the Caucasus is stronger than ever, and analysts are convinced that opening the borders with Armenia will only increase the local population's loyalty to Ankara. Nevertheless, some experts believe that the borders between Turkey and Armenia will not open either this year or in the foreseeable future. After all, discussions about this have been ongoing since as far back as 2020. February 11th, 2023. It seemed that the end of the blockade was already near. At that time, the border was temporarily opened. For the first time in 30 years, it was open to deliver humanitarian aid from Armenia to those affected by the severe earthquake in Turkey and Syria. Afterwards, Erdogan thanked them for their support and once again locked up his checkpoints. After all, Ankara can increase its presence in the Caucasus even without opening its borders.
This means an increase in Turkish influence in Armenia, which in turn means an increase in Turkish influence in the South Caucasus. But they say, sorry, but there is a personal political promise from Mr. Erdogan to Mr. Aliyev. So even though we understand that the normalization of Armenian-Turkish relations is beneficial, Turkey still considers Azerbaijan more important than Armenia?
The only thing all experts agree on is that no matter how events unfold in Turkish-Armenian relations, they will be far better than the current relations between the Caucasus countries and Russia. In just a few years, Russia has lost all its former influence over the region, ceding this position to Turkey. If this is true, Russia will be completely pushed out of the region, and it seems that it has no levers or any means to influence this.
In other words, the time has already been lost.
Everything that Russia could have done needed to be done back in 2020.
We've only seen things like this in Hollywood movies, but now it's happening in real life. During the protests in Nepal, a minister was evacuated using ropes lowered from helicopters. In fact, let me remind you about the authorities in Nepal. At the beginning of September, they banned many messengers and social networks in the country, including Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, and YouTube. Local residents opposed this decision and began staging demonstrations in many cities across the country. I really hope that one day you'll see footage like this from Moscow. But what am I talking about? Russia isn't submissive, and are they really capable of overthrowing the regime like that? Meanwhile, an assassination attempt was being prepared against the main Kremlin propagandist Solovyov. This was reported by the propagandist himself. He claims that the man was allegedly cooperating with Ukrainian intelligence services, monitoring his movements and how he got around the city. But then, for some reason, he went back to Ulyanovsk, and that's where the FSB found him. But even Russians themselves, in fact, did not really believe this entire charade at all.
Honestly, he looks like some kind of freak. Solovyov is just a gift for Ukrainian propaganda. They should be paying him extra for his brilliant subversive work deep behind enemy lines, not plotting an assassination. Most likely, someone from our side wanted to get rid of him, but now they'll accuse him of collaborating with every intelligence agency in the world. And an even more likely scenario is that no one was actually planning any assassination at all. And all of this is just theater to keep Solovyov afloat.
How do you like our news? Let us know what we should change to get better. We will definitely take your feedback into account. In the meantime, please like this video to support what we do, and be sure to subscribe to our channel, Ukrainians Today, so you don't miss our next episodes. See you soon.